Well, thank you so much, Erin, for coming on this show. I'm so excited to have you, and I'm so excited to just chat about all the things today.
Thank you for having me. I'm so honored to be here.
Yay! Well, why don't I just kind of start by asking, you to tell us a little bit about your story, who you are, what led you to start Body by Breakfast, and we can kind of go from there.
Yeah, definitely. I'll try to give you the short version because it could definitely go on for a while. But I guess first things first, my name is Erin, and I am a newly registered dietitian in training to specialize in eating disorder treatment. I've been working with an outpatient treatment center, and hopefully I'm going to get onto their team within the next couple of months, which is exciting. But so, as for my story, I guess I'll start from the beginning. I grew up in Southern California. So, my perception of, beauty and what we're supposed to look like as females was altered at a very young age. Everyone and their mom were always on some kind of diet trying to lose weight. So, I was constantly around the messages that our bodies weren't okay and that they needed to be fixed and that I should always strive for a smaller body.
Mm,
I was lucky that none of those messages really impacted me during that time. They were all there, but I never really did anything about them
mm,
until later in life. But I was always a soccer player. I played soccer majority of my life. I got a scholarship to play Division 1 college soccer in Louisiana. So I packed up my bags after I graduated high school and headed down south. So it was a huge culture shock, but it was just a fun experience for me and
yeah.
something new and getting out of my comfort zone and all that kind of stuff. So I had a pretty successful and smooth freshman and sophomore year. I played every game. I loved every second of it. I had a bunch of friends, was just like having the time of my life. And it wasn't until about my junior year where things started to go a little bit downhill. I had a pretty verbally abusive soccer coach at the time. And when our team wasn't performing well, or we were losing games, he was very quick to blame me. I played center defender. So I was like right before the goalie. And so, he kind of said, as goals go through or whatever, then like, it's your job to not let goals go by pretty much. And so when we were losing, it was kind of just like my fault. And I was like, okay, great. So I just kind of felt like the weight of my team was on my shoulders. And it felt as if I wasn't doing my job right. I was failing, like I wasn't good enough. And that took a really big toll on me mentally, emotionally, physically. And I really got to the point where I started resenting him and I hated playing soccer. I lost all my passion for it. But the thing was, I couldn't control him. I couldn't control, a majority of the situation. I was under scholarship, so I had a responsibility. So
Oh,
the one thing I could control, however, was how I felt about myself outside of soccer. I thought that I
mm,
could control how like desirable I was and how perfect I was. And these are like all in quotes.
yeah.
Finally finding that feeling of being wanted and being accepted that I just like was longing for so long. And so to me, that meant changing my body to a more idealistic version, which just means smaller. And so I started with some really extreme orthorexic tendencies and became obsessed with healthy eating and eating perfectly clean while also like excessively exercising, both as a way to shrink my body. So I would do my soccer workouts, which were already like super intense. And then I would do another workout later in the day. So all while under nourishing my body. So they were kind of like the dynamic duo, just like going against each other. So I was really strict with everything I ate. I tracked every calorie. I weighed every piece of food that like went into my body. And this led to a very restrictive diet and eventually morphed into anorexia. So my teammates, friends, trainers, doctors were all really concerned and they knew that I wasn't okay. And so my senior year, I was not medically cleared to play soccer, and it was recommended that I go and get help. So I remember it like it was yesterday. It was a Friday afternoon. I was sitting on a bench outside of my soccer field, and I called my parents and I told them I need to go get help for an eating disorder. So a couple days later, I checked into a residential treatment center where I spent 6 weeks working on recovering. And that was about 6 years ago. And so now I am glad to say that I'm fully recovered, and I have made it, my mission and my purpose to help others who are struggling like I was and be kind of like their support and their glimmer of hope that like it does get better. So believe it or not, that's like the shorter version of my story. But yeah, that's kind of how I got to where I am today.
Oh, Erin, thank you so much for sharing. I know it's always kind of hard to share stories because I also went through something similar where um, I feel like it always does kind of draw back to the feeling of control. And when your life feels out of control, what can you control? Like you said,
Hmm.
you can
Yeah.
control, well, you can try to
Yeah.
control your body and all of that stuff.
Emphasis
But
on try.
yeah, absolutely, totally, and so I relate to you so much, and I think, it's inspiring to see that have been able to come through it and all that you're doing to really just help people to kind of, either recognize that, they're in that space and kind of overcome it, all of that good stuff. I'd love to talk a little bit about orthorexia and just kind of get your perspective on that because I think sometimes, um it can really be kind of thought of as well, let me say this. I feel like sometimes eating disorders kind of start out as, oh, this person's just being really healthy and they're really health
Hmm.
conscious, and it can quickly spiral out of control. And maybe people don't even realize it. So I'd love to just kind of hear your thoughts on orthorexia. And I know you're a newly registered dietitian, so
Yeah.
congratulations. But
Thank
I would
you.
it's so cool. It's so cool. But I would kind of just love to hear kind of your perspective on that.
Yeah, so I think orthorexia is definitely one of those eating disorders that like don't get enough attention, especially like in the society we live in now where a lot of disordered behaviors and even eating disorder behaviors are so normalized, and we all get the messages about, we should be eating healthy, we should be eating this, we shouldn't be eating this, like, yada, yada, yada. And it becomes this unhealthy obsession with like having to eat quote unquote perfectly. And I think it needs to get more recognition, and there needs to be this line drawn of like what is an unhealthy obsession with healthy eating. And it's hard because it's so normalized and all these behaviors are just like common, and it's hard, I think, for people to understand that like too much of a good thing, whether it's these quote unquote healthy foods or, quote unquote unhealthy foods, is not a good thing. And there needs to be that sense of balance. And when there's obsession involved, like you can't have that balance. And I think it'd be really eye opening for people to understand and learn more about what orthorexia is and like how damaging and dangerous it can be, and how easy it is to like go down that slippery slope of being in a disordered eating mindset to being in an eating disorder. And so I definitely think there needs to be more education and awareness of orthorexia.
Absolutely. And I think even with social media these days, people kind of just fall down this rabbit hole of like, oh my
Mm-hmm.
gosh, I should be doing this. I should be doing this. And it becomes really, really stressful. And people are like,
Mm-hmm.
well, if I'm not eating organic all the time, or if I'm not, whatever the food rule is, you're kind of really being influenced by these influencers, which is, a
Absolutely.
lot of what they're
Yeah.
supposed to be doing. But
Yeah.
if you're trying to do everything, it becomes mentally taxing, I feel like. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that's why I love your account so much, because it's real. It brings reality into healthy eating and what healthy eating really is. It's not about
Mm-hmm.
eating organic all the time, or it's not about, I'll let you talk more about that, but, like, cutting not eating carbs and, like, all of these fad
Yeah.
diets and all of these things, it's really about having a healthy relationship with food.
Mhm. Definitely. I mean, I think the word healthy gets thrown around so much, and like we have only seen healthy as being, eating fruits and vegetables, and like you said, eating organic, and eating paleo and gluten free and like all this stuff, where like healthy is so subjective, and what's
Right.
healthy for somebody isn't going to be healthy for somebody. It's like if I'm allergic to a food, eating that isn't healthy for me, whether it's, deemed good or bad, and it's just like if somebody doesn't have a healthy relationship with food, then like there's so many things that aren't healthy for them. And it's just that I don't really even like to use the word healthy very often, just because, like I said, it's so subjective and it's different for everyone. And we can't base what one person is doing, or we can't base what we need off of what somebody else is doing, and it's just like trying to find what works for us and listening to our body and doing what we need to do without all of these like external voices, going on in our ears.
Absolutely. I think we've gotten so far away from ourselves and we look to other people to tell us how we're supposed to live, really with eating, but also with other facets of our life too. And then
Hmm.
we get so far down these rabbit holes again that we're not even living the life we want to live and we realize we're not even happy. And I think
Hmm.
it is just it's kind of crazy how life just kind of can change so quickly and shift to a really negative, unhealthy mindset, even when you think you're doing things that are healthy.
Right? Yeah, absolutely. And it you don't realize it until you realize it,
Yeah.
and it's
Yeah.
just it's scary, and it's
Yeah.
like not any way that anybody should live.
Totally. Absolutely. So I would love to hear if you have any tips or tricks on kind of how to break food rules. I know this is something that you work on, not you, but just collectively people work on in eating disorder recovery is breaking those rules.
Mhm.
And food rules are different for everyone, you know? People could be afraid of eating carbs or even of eating fruit or of eating over a certain amount of calories or not eating
Mhm.
organic. Like there's just so many. And I think that food rules are really individual to whatever you're experiencing. But I think it would be awesome to hear some tips you have because
Yeah.
even people who don't necessarily have an eating disorder or haven't recognized that they have an eating disorder could still have rules around food. And I think it's important to really live a life without those rules to really be happy.
Absolutely. I mean, food rules are everywhere, and a lot of them aren't those like big ones like, I don't eat carbs or whatever. There's like little things here and there that are just so normalized, and they have just become like ingrained in our heads. And it's a lot of things based on, outside sources, or based on what we think is quote unquote right, or what we should be eating and doing, instead of like using our own knowledge of what feels good to us and like what our body is needing. So you had some really good examples about food rules, and I think those are some really common ones that so many people struggle with. And the thing with food rules is that they rob us from our abilities to listen to our bodies and to be able to eat intuitively, which is so problematic because no one besides you can possibly know what your body needs. And our bodies aren't designed to be governed by a set of rules. And I know that a lot of us have had these food rules ingrained in our brains for such a long time, and it can be really scary to challenge and to dismantle those rules. But it's so important to accept that, like you said, breaking those rules is like key to freedom. And that's how we break free of diet culture and really be able to live, a fulfilling, like amazing life, And so the big question that like everyone asks is like, how do you break your food rules? It's a lot easier said than done. I totally get that. But I
Yeah.
think for me and what I've seen work for many other people is that there are a few steps to take to get to the place of like rule free freedom. So it's kind of like a 1, 2, 3 type thing is what
Mhm.
I usually tell people. So first I suggest grabbing a piece of paper or opening like the notes section on your phone and just like writing down each and every one of your food rules that comes to your mind.
Mm.
Spend a couple of days being really mindful and seeing if any like hidden rules pop up, stuff like that. You don't have to get every single one of them. You can just continue to add on to the list. But I think having them somewhere where you can see them is really eye-opening and really helpful, just to like see what your food rules are. And
Mm.
so next, after you write down as many as you can, grab another piece of paper or open another notes tab or whatever, and order your rules from easiest to hardest to break. So like
Mm.
one through whatever, one being the easiest, and then so on and so forth. And this really helps ease into breaking your food rules, because it can be really overwhelming and really scary if you try to like knock them all out at once. So if you start with one that's easier to break, then that can, relieve some of the stress and the anxiety. And so once you have them all numbered, like start with number one on your list, make a plan to break the rule, work that rule into your life in as many ways as possible. Like, for example, if you have a food rule that you can't eat past 7 o'clock every night, which is a very common one for so many people, plan on having a snack sometime after 7 every single night, whether it's 7:01, 7:02, sometime after 7. That breaks that rule. And the thing with breaking food rules is repetition and consistency. So the more that rule is broken, the easier it's going to get. And before you know it, breaking that rule doesn't cause guilt, stress, anxiety, but instead it's just neutral and it's just a thing, and no longer has that power and that hold over you. And so once you're done with one rule and you feel comfortable about breaking it, you move on to the next rule, and so on and so forth, and just start knocking them out one by one. We've been so conditioned to believe that we can't trust our bodies, but the truth is that our bodies know best. And once we start learning to listen to them, again, it's going to prove to you that you can trust it if you allow it. And, one of the first steps of being able to trust your body is to let go of those food rules and like really let your body take control and tell you what it needs. So those are like kind of the step-by-step steps, I guess,
Yeah, yeah.
that have been really helpful.
Oh my gosh, Erin, I love that. That is so
Yeah.
helpful to even just know that, because that wasn't something I did in recovery. I didn't
Yeah.
write them all down and take a look at them, because I think that really solidifies them. It makes you aware of what the
Mhm.
rules are,
Yeah, definitely.
and then you can totally look back at it and be like, "Okay, this is a food rule." And it doesn't have
Mhm.
to be that way, instead of like, oh, because I know I used to get caught up in kind of the shoulds.
Yeah.
I should be doing this, or I shouldn't be eating that. And that's, I
Mhm.
feel like, when you really know, like, okay, I need to take a look at that. That might be a food rule. Then you write it down, and then you find that awareness. And I think that's helpful for so many people, because like you said, the thing eating past 7 p.m., like, that's not food freedom, right? That's not.
Mhm.
And I also think you just said so much great stuff. I'm just kind of rambling off of what you
Yeah.
said, but it's also kind of really about, you don't have to be eating when you're starving, right?
Mhm.
So if you want to have a dessert after dinner and you're not hungry, that's okay, right?
Yeah.
So I
And
think
then
there's just.
I sorry.
No, no, go for it.
I think a lot of common things that I see with eating disorders and disordered eating is that they don't know when they're hungry. They don't have their hunger cues. They don't know when they're full. And so being able to know and to accept that your body is going to need food throughout the day, even past 7 o'clock, like your body
Mm.
doesn't know what time of the day it is. All it knows is that it needs food and it needs nutrients. And like the more you can be consistent with that, the more that you can trust your body and the more that your body can trust you. So being able to break those rules, like whatever they are, is like giving your body the power back and being able to regulate your hunger and your fullness and all that kind of stuff. And that process with the food rules is what I did with fear foods as well. That's a big thing
Mm.
in eating disorders, and
Yeah.
disordered eating is a lot of food rules, and it's all about just like doing the opposite of what your mind is telling you to do when you're in that state of disordered eating or whatever. It's just letting go of all of
Yeah.
that rigid structure and just like letting yourself be and letting yourself listen to your body.
Absolutely. And I think you mentioned earlier repetition and consistency is key in breaking those. And I think
Hmm.
that's really important to call out as well because the first time you eat it, it's going to be scary. Like, let's just be real.
Absolutely.
It's going to be
Yeah.
scary and you're going to have anxiety and anxious thoughts around it. But you have to just continue doing it. And every single time it gets a little less scary, a little less scary.
Hmm.
And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, yeah, I actually really want to eat that croissant for breakfast without
Yeah.
anything else.
Hmm.
Or maybe the next day you're like, I actually don't really have the taste for that. And that's really
Hmm.
where the intuitive eating part comes in.
Yeah, definitely. It's all about learning how to, again, listen to your body. And once you get to that point of intuitive eating, you can really like focus on how food feels in your body. So during this beginning process of intuitive eating, it's really uncomfortable and it's really scary just trying to like neutralize foods and get rid of your food rules. But you eventually get to the point where it's just like, okay, it's nothing. You don't have to think about it. And it's just like, that's where the power is. And that is the freedom that I wish everyone could just feel. Cause like once you feel that, there's like
Yeah.
nothing better.
Absolutely. And I think there's always kind of a lingering fear of like, I'm going to eat that until I can't eat anymore every single day of
Yes.
my life. But when you really do start breaking those food rules, eating those fear foods, then you really start to recognize, okay, like, yeah, I might eat that for a couple days because I haven't let myself have this for so long.
Yeah.
And then you'll hit a point where you're like, gosh, I don't even really want that. And if I want it
Mhm.
tomorrow, I know that I can have it, but I
Yeah.
don't need to eat it today because I know it will be there in the future when I do want to eat it.
Mhm. It loses its excitement and it's like
Yeah.
it's no longer something that's like in super enticing or like, you don't feel that like you're cheating or, stuff like that. It just kind of you lose interest in it and it's just like, okay, well, it doesn't taste as good as I thought it was, or, it's just, it doesn't feel as good. It's just, you start to really like figure out what foods you do like and what foods feel good and sound good and taste good. And it's just, you can't even put into words how great that feeling is.
Yeah, it is a literal freedom and you kind of just feel
Hmm.
the shackles falling off of your arms and you just have this whole new perspective on life for sure.
Absolutely.
I think I'd love to touch on just a little bit of, you know, how kind of starting your account, did it have any Body by Breakfast? Did it have
Hmm.
any kind of help with your recovery process? Just kind of sharing your experiences with others?
Yeah, definitely. So I originally started Body by Breakfast when I got out of my treatment center because I was like, this place was like my safe zone. It was like
Yeah.
everyone knew what was going on. Everyone knew how I felt. Like it was just kind of like my safety bubble. And then, I get thrown out into the real world and I'm like, what do I do? How do I live life? How do I like
Yeah.
go back to being like a quote unquote normal person and like live in this world that like doesn't want me to recover pretty much. And I was like, maybe I need a way for me to stay accountable. Instagram wasn't like a super big thing back then. Like it wasn't the most I think Facebook was probably more popular than Instagram. So I was like, you know what? I'll start this account. And it'll be like a way for me to stay accountable and like to track my progress and like make sure that I am on the road to recovery that like I left treatment with. And um it was, it was just like me sharing, I think, some food. It wasn't anything like really big. It was just like taking a couple pictures of food here and there. And I started using like hashtags and looking for other accounts that were like eating disorder recovery accounts, and all of a sudden I started to find people that were going through the same thing I was going, like in recovery, and I started following them and I started getting other followers, and like it just like turned into this really great community, and like people knew what I was going through. I felt safe and I felt comfortable, and like I just felt like I could be myself and I could just like let myself recover and like not be judged or shamed or criticized. And it just like, it helped so much in my recovery. And it still helps me to this day. I have made so many amazing like friends, and the community and just stuff like that is so supportive, and they're just so loving and so caring. And I didn't know people like that existed. I grew up in a society where everyone was kind of mean and kind of petty and catty. And I was like, well, I don't really want to associate with that. So being able to find people who understood what I was going through, were so supportive and just so loving, was like life changing for my recovery. And I owe a lot of where I am today to that.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. I think accountability is key, but even more key is having a support system and having people who have gone through it to really
Hmm.
be there supporting you along the way because, or even going through it, right?
Hmm.
Because it's just the power in knowing that you're not alone is absolutely tremendous. And I know we kind of talked about how social media can influence some bad behaviors, but I also think we have the power to curate the content we see. And it can
Absolutely.
actually help us in a recovery process or really get through any kind of trauma, build that community. And so I think that kind of just looking at bigger picture really brings the positive aspect of social media is you have the power to kind of make it what you want. So unfollow the people that make you feel horrible and that make you feel jealous or sad about your life or make you want to restrict your food or make you want to over exercise or have an unrealistic body image. Like just
Hmm.
get rid of it and make it a
Yeah.
positive experience.
I know it can be very challenging for a lot of people to do that, because it just feels like, I feel like they think they're like letting themselves go or like not taking care of their health, and all that kind of stuff. And I know that was kind of how it was like for me at the like during my eating disorder. I would use social media as a way to like compare my body and to like get ideas about what I was supposed to eat if I wanted to look a certain way. Like, I would follow workout routines of certain people who had the body that I wanted and stuff like that. So, like you said, it can be very toxic and very damaging, but it also could be so powerful and so amazing. And it is your responsibility to make it a good place. And like you have the power, you can do so many things to make sure it is a, you know, positive place to be in. And I think especially with the rise of TikTok over the pandemic. I have like dabbled in TikTok every now and then. Not really. I wouldn't call myself like, I don't really go on TikTok, but like I have seen some stuff, and it has been really troubling for me to see some of the stuff, and it's really concerning, because most people spend quite a lot of time on social media and are potentially exposed to unrealistic images or unrealistic ideals of beauty, diet talk, body shaming, weight loss posts, everything kind of in between. And I think it's also important to mention that a lot of those creators who are posting that stuff are thin, white, able bodied, females. And there's not a lot of body diversity or just
Yeah.
diversity in general. And I think it's gotten a little better over time. I still think that there needs to be a lot of work done. And that type of content can be extremely triggering for someone who is struggling with an eating disorder, any form of disordered eating. And it's really important to be mindful and aware of the nature of social media and be aware of the content you're consuming. And so I think over the years, my relationship with social media has changed so much, just being really mindful of who I'm following. Like you said, unfollow people who make me feel bad about myself or have me comparing myself to them, and like giving myself breaks on social media. I actually set like time limits on the apps so I'm not on them for a certain amount of time, and just being really conscious of the content I consume.
Absolutely. It's so important. It's just, I mean, even last night, I'll say, like, I stayed up way too late scrolling on my phone. There was no reason for
Hmm.
that. But it can suck you in, and then you start to, I mean, it's almost inevitable to have no comparison game when you're following people who make you feel kinda yucky. So I think
Absolutely.
it's important, we gotta take it into our own hands and really curate the experience that is gonna make our life, really propel forward instead of making us feel stuck or going backwards.
Absolutely.
So, do you have any tips on just, like, learning to love your body and, what you've seen kind of help people overcome, poor body image? Because I know that's a really big part of eating disorders.
Yeah, it's something that um, is really important, and it's really hard
Yeah.
to have a good body image when you're in a state of restriction and you're having like so much negative self-talk and food fears and food rules and social media. All these things kind of just like team up against you and make it really, really hard to love your body.
Yes.
And I am at a place where I I don't think that loving your body is necessarily um the like how you should start. I don't think you should
Mm,
go into it with just like, oh, I'm gonna start loving my body today. I don't think
right.
that that's very effective. I think that more of body neutrality and body
Mm,
acceptance, and just being able to accept the fact that you have a body and your body is okay. It doesn't need to be fixed. It's
yeah.
perfectly fine. No matter what shape, weight, color, everything, your body is okay. And I think that has really helped me learn how to be more appreciative of my body and be able to see it as more than just what it looks like, and be able to focus on what it does for me and how amazing it is and how it has just been this vehicle that I get to walk through life in. It's not
Yeah.
it's nothing, it's not for other people to look at. That's not the
Right.
point of my body. It's so much more than that, and I've had some pretty severe injuries, I think, with soccer, and just the fact that my body fought through all that has really made
Mm,
me so appreciative of it. And there's like little things here and there that I like to do to help my body image. I mean, I think we all know that not every day is a good body image day, but
right.
I think that there are certain things we can do on those bad body image days that make them a little bit more tolerable. So, first thing, clean up your social media. We talked about it, just before. And it's just like follow people whose bodies look like yours, or follow different diversities of bodies. I think it's really
Right.
important that we get out of this narrow vision of what we think is a standard beauty, when in
Right.
reality there is so much diversity. We all come in different shapes and sizes, and it's important that we are exposing ourselves to more normal looking bodies.
Yeah.
So that's been really helpful for me, making sure that I am wearing clothes that I feel comfortable and confident in. I get rid of all the clothes that don't fit me anymore. I
Yeah.
did like a whole closet purge a while ago, and that was just like so stress relieving. I'm not trying on clothes anymore that don't fit me. I think that's setting yourself up for failure and to be disappointed and let down. I try to stay away from mirrors as much as I can. Body checking is a huge thing that really
Yeah.
triggers my negative body image. And just kind of distracting myself, getting out, being around people who are loving and supportive and make me feel like I'm more than a body is like so, so important. Just like going on a walk, listening to music, anything that's going to get my mind off of, how I'm feeling in this moment, and making sure that
Yeah.
I am eating enough during the day, even when I don't feel good in my body. Because when I don't
Yeah.
eat, that just makes everything kind of a whole lot worse.
Yeah, yeah, it can cause a spiral for sure. And I
Mhm.
think body appreciation is kind of what you were talking about. That is
Mhm.
I love that because we aren't gonna love our bodies every day. No one is. Literally no
Right.
one. That's
No
just
one.
part of life. It's part of being
Yeah.
a human.
Mhm.
Um, and there could be so many other things going on in our life that are kind of contributing to that. So I love that body appreciation just for all the things it can do, not just how it looks, right?
Yeah, because I think like I love the body positivity movement. I think it's great, but I think there are some misconceptions about it. Whereas like, oh, if you don't love your body, or like you kind of have to love your body all the time, is pretty much a lot of the messaging that I get from it. And it's like, well, okay, what if I don't love my body? Like, am I doing it wrong? Am I not body positive? So in the past, that hasn't really worked for me, trying to force myself to love my body all the time, because that's just like not realistic, and
Right.
it makes me feel even worse about my body. So if I can just like be neutral about it and just be appreciative of it, that has really helped with my just like overall acceptance of my body in general.
Of course, of course. And I like how you said, go through your closet. Our bodies are meant
Hmm.
to change and evolve. We're not going to stay one size or, one fit forever. So go through your closet, get rid of the things that don't fit you or even the things that don't make you feel good, right? Even if they
Hmm.
do fit. I think that's really important because, you know, it's just we're not meant to fit into clothes. Clothes are meant to fit us, right? And so
Yes.
I think like just go out and buy whatever size fits you. And also it's important to kind of remind yourself sizing is literally different at every single store. So, it doesn't matter
Hmm.
what size
Right.
you get, right?
Yeah, I think that is such a hard thing. Like for girls especially, it's just like those sizes are so different, and different clothes fit our bodies differently, and it's just
Right.
like not blaming our bodies for it. It's not our
No.
fault. It's the fashion industry's fault. It's the designer's fault. Like it's it's just we're so quick to blame our bodies and to want to fix things, and you know that's just like not how it is. It's not our fault. We don't have to change our bodies to wear certain clothes.
Yeah. Or to really fit any ideal. I mean,
Mhm.
if we just started kind of holding ourselves at like the truest kind of most holy thing, then I feel like we could start really making headway.
Mhm. Absolutely.
Well, I want to be mindful of your time because I know time is such a precious resource. And I have a little bite series kind of at the end of each podcast. So I'll ask you those
Mhm.
questions in a second. But I just wanted to see if you have any resources for those who are going through an eating disorder, or maybe even those who just kind of are starting to get a negative relationship with food and kind of, want to, you know, start tackling that.
Yeah. I think that there are a lot of people who are struggling with their relationship with food, and whether it's an eating disorder or not, there are a lot of disordered eating behaviors that, like I said earlier, are just so normalized. And I think
Hmm.
once um, that's seen and like people realize, the damage that they're doing, it can really spark a change. And I think that's amazing. And I'm sure, as you know, I'm a huge proponent for intuitive eating. That has been like
Yeah.
my saving grace and has really changed my overall relationship with food, and just like life in general. And so I think first I would highly recommend reading and buying and reading the book Intuitive Eating. It was written by two registered
Mm.
dietitians, and it is just such an amazing book, and really opens your eyes to diet culture and this oppressed way of living that we have, and
Mm.
society and all this stuff. And I won't go into like the whole book because it's a lot of information, but basically they go over like 10 principles of intuitive eating, which, to sum it up, the principles basically teach you how to give yourself unconditional permission to eat whatever you want without feeling guilty, how to rely on your internal hunger and satiety signals, along with other cues such as like energy levels, mental clarity, stress levels, and just being able to trust that our bodies will tell us when, what, and how much to eat. So, intuitive eating is something that definitely took me a long time to learn and to apply to my own life because I was so scared of letting go of like my eating disorder control and like trying something new and getting out of my comfort zone. But it has been extremely life changing. And to say it was easy would definitely be a lie, but sticking with it and trusting the process completely changed my life. And I finally found the enjoyment and excitement in food again while being able to also properly nourish my body and just letting go of the lies diet culture was telling me, in general. And so
Yeah.
that's kind of like my end all be all of having a healthy relationship with food. But if you're, struggling with an eating disorder or disordered eating, I highly recommend seeking professional help.
Mm.
That's like the best and most effective way to recover from anything like that. And there are a ton of online resources. NEDA is one of like the big
Mhm.
ones, the National Eating Disorder Association. They have, everything and anything anyone could need if they need help with anything like that.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Those are super helpful resources.
Yeah.
And I actually hadn't heard of that book, so I might read it just because I'm
Oh,
super
it's the
interested.
best.
Yeah.
They have a workbook too. So there's a lot of
Oh,
little exercises and things here and there. And I think that really helped me as well because I can read a book, but being able to actually apply it into something is like totally different and really helpful.
absolutely. Have you heard of the book 8 Keys to Eating Disorder Recovery by Karen
Yes, I have
Preston?
that in my little closet over there.
Yeah, yeah. She's the
Yeah.
founder of the Montanito Treatment Center. And my therapist actually,
Okay.
she recommended it to me. She's actually friends with her. That's why she recommended it. But
Oh,
yeah,
that's cool.
yeah, so I'll put all these links in the show notes just so everyone has them and,
Yeah,
uh,
definitely.
can get access to them easily, but
Yeah.
okay, into the Little Bites series,
Okay.
what is your current favorite wellness trend, if you have one? I know after a conversation, it's probably not likely.
Well, I don't know if it's a trend, but I mean, I guess I would say intuitive eating. I think it's
Yeah,
gotten a lot more hype and a lot more appreciation over the years, and people are a lot more interested in it. And as long as they're getting the right information about intuitive eating, I think that is my favorite quote unquote trend as of
yes.
now.
I love that, the most positive trend that I've ever heard, and then just
Yeah.
everyone get the book and you're on your
Yep.
way.
Absolutely.
All right. So, what is the first thing you do when you wake up in the morning to really support your health?
I mean, I would love to say that I have like tea or like, lemon water or whatever, but that's just like not the case for me.
Yeah.
I start with a cup of coffee in the morning, I have breakfast, and that's about my morning routine. I'm not very strict or like, I don't know. I don't do a lot of things in the morning. I just kind of get up and do my thing.
I love that. I think that's the like the healthiest thing of all, probably. And also, coffee fuels the soul. Like, that is so,
Absolutely. Yes. Like when you feel it go down like your
yeah,
throat and it's like it hits your heart and you're like, oh, yes, so good.
absolutely. Best thing. What is your number one favorite veggie and how do you prepare it? I always ask
I
this
think,
because I feel like people really need help with veggies in their diet, just
mhm.
making them taste good. Because
Yeah, absolutely.
eating a piece of
Um,
broccoli doesn't really, it's not
oh,
gonna do it.
that doesn't sound
Gross.
very good. um, but I think my favorite vegetable is probably just zucchini. I like it because it's so versatile. It doesn't have a ton of flavor, so you can kind of just like add it into anything. Like if you want
Yeah.
something savory, I add it into my eggs, or like a
Yum.
casserole or something. Like you can just throw them into anything and they taste just kind of like whatever you're cooking. And then you can like I put it in I try to sneak in some vegetables with my family. So I'll put it in like banana bread or like
Yes.
muffins or something, just like grate it up and you like wring out the water and you can just like put it in anything. So that's my favorite way to sneak in some vegetables.
I love that. It's like a make it anything vegetable.
Yes, it's very versatile.
Okay, so I'm excited to hear this one from you. If you could only pick one meal to eat for the rest of your life, what would it be? It's super hard, I know, but
Yeah, this is a very tricky question, but I think based off of my Instagram handle and the fact that I have pancakes tattooed on my ankle, it would
oh, love
be
it.
some sort of breakfast. So, probably a stack of pancakes, maybe some hash browns, some scrambled eggs,
Oh,
just like as breakfasty as you can get. But
I
probably I would eat it like at night because I think it tastes better.
I love that. I
Yeah.
love breakfast for dinner. Do you
So
just do
good.
normal pancakes?
It depends on how I'm feeling. I usually just use it from like a box. I'm not
Yeah.
very like let me make this from scratch when I can just like add water to a box.
Oh, heck yeah.
And I think that's just like proof of how far like my relationship with food has come.
Yeah.
Like I used to only eat like if it was made with like almond flour, coconut oil, or like the non-nutritive sweetener or something. I would never
Mm,
eat anything from a box. I'm like, well, that's
mm.
just like one, it's convenient. I can just mix it with some water, and two, it tastes good. It's like, and it's
Yeah.
cheaper. So whatever.
Absolutely. Totally.
Yeah.
I would definitely be adding chocolate chips into mine.
Oh yeah, that's good too. I'll put some probably peanut butter on it and
Oh,
maybe some blueberries or something.
I just peanut butter. Actually, my food that I would eat forever is probably peanut butter. Like I am all
Ah,
about
it's
it.
so good. Yeah, you don't even need to eat it with anything, just like a spoon. Mm,
Totally.
so
Well,
good.
this kind of brought up one thing that I didn't ask you. Why Body by Breakfast? Why the name? Why the handle? But now I think we
I
know.
was thinking about it I was thinking about it, I don't know, maybe like last week, and I can't remember like the exact moment that I named it. I knew that I had always liked breakfast, and I think I was like on one of those like things on Google where you can like type in a couple of your favorite things and it like generates a name for you. And I think I
Yeah.
typed in like breakfast and probably something else, and like Body by Breakfast came up, and I was like, that's it. That's it. And it's stuck ever since.
Oh my gosh. Well, it's absolutely perfect. I love
I love it.
it.
Yeah. It's just like, it's so me.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
is.
it's
Oh,
good.
that just goes back to the authenticity of all that you're doing. But
Yeah.
I just want to say thank you so much for coming on and for sharing all of this amazing information. I know I've learned so much and I know that so many people will benefit from this episode. I appreciate all of your tips and tricks and advice. It's really inspiring what you're doing. So, could you just let everyone know where to connect with you and find all of the amazing recipes that you post and all the other things.
Yeah. So, I mean, if you haven't caught on yet, my Instagram handle is Body by Breakfast. It's all one word, and I'm pretty active on Instagram. And yeah, that's where you can find me.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Erin. I appreciate your time and I hope you have an amazing rest of your day.
Thank you for having me. It was so fun.